He slammed my report onto the table, called me useless in front of everyone, and told me I'd never make it here. I smiled, because he didn't know who my brother was. That moment still plays in my head like a movie scene. I stood there, frozen, my cheeks burning as the room went silent. Everyone was staring at me, some with pity, some pretending not to look, most just trying not to get involved. Ethan, my manager, looked so pleased with himself, like he'd just squashed a bug. He didn't even care that he was yelling at me in front of 10 other people. That's just who he was. I had joined the company 2 weeks ago. Fresh out of grad school, I landed a role in the marketing department of one of the most talked about companies in the tech world. Everyone told me how lucky I was to be hired here. I thought so too, until I met Ethan. From day one, he acted like he hated me. He never used my name, just you or new girl. He'd shoot down every idea I shared, even though other team leads later told me they were good. He gave me twice the work and half the credit. When things went wrong, I was the first person he blamed. When things went well, he acted like it was all his doing. What made it worse was how fake he was. To upper management, he was all charm, always smiling, cracking jokes, acting like the world's best boss. But behind closed doors, he was cruel, sarcastic, and petty, especially toward women. It wasn't just me either. He talked down to other female employees, constantly interrupted them, and made offhand comments that crossed every line. But no one said anything. Everyone was scared. Ethan had connections. His uncle was best friends with the current CEO, and rumor was he'd be promoted soon. So people kept quiet. HR ignored complaints. And I was left to deal with him every single day. What no one knew, what Ethan didn't know, was that the company had just appointed a new CEO. And that CEO was my older brother. He hadn't started yet. He was still wrapping things up at his previous job before stepping in. We had agreed not to tell anyone we were related. We didn't want people treating me differently. I wanted to earn respect on my own. But standing there, with my report torn in half and Ethan glaring at me like I was trash, I felt the weight of that choice. Still, I didn't say anything. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't quit. I just smiled, because I knew something Ethan didn't. He thought he was crushing me, but really, he was digging his own grave, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. Every day at work felt like walking into a storm I couldn't escape. After the meeting where Ethan humiliated me, things only got worse. He didn't just dislike me. He went out of his way to make sure I felt small. He started giving me the most pointless and degrading tasks. One day, he made me relabel all the supply cabinets in the office. The next, he told me to take notes for meetings I wasn't even a part of. If I handed in a report, he either ignored it completely or picked it apart in front of others, twisting my words to make me sound clueless. Whenever I came up with an idea, he laughed. If someone else suggested the same thing later, he praised them like it was genius. I tried to speak up in team huddles, but he always cut me off or rolled his eyes. Eventually, I just stayed quiet. It was easier. The worst part, Ethan took credit for my work constantly. I created a social campaign that went semi-viral. He presented it to upper management as his idea, never even mentioned my name. When I politely brought it up to him in private, he just smiled and said, "That's how the game works. Learn to play it, sweetheart." I tried going to HR. I booked a meeting with one of the reps and explained everything. The tone of her voice changed the moment I said Ethan's name. She looked uncomfortable, then said they'd look into it. Nothing happened. Later, I overheard her laughing in the break room with Ethan. Everyone knew he had protection. His uncle was still close with the outgoing CEO, and most people believed Ethan would be promoted soon. No one wanted to risk going against him. So I stopped looking for help and started collecting proof. I saved every email, screenshot every rude message, and even started recording conversations on my phone. I backed everything up to a private drive. It became a habit like brushing my teeth. I didn't know exactly when I'd use it, but I knew I would. One night, I stayed late to finish a report. I went to the kitchen and saw the janitor, Sam, sweeping near the hallway. We started chatting, and I learned he'd worked at the company longer than most managers. After a few days of small talk, we became friendly. Sam didn't say much at first, but one night, he told me something that made my stomach turn. He said he'd overheard Ethan in the stairwell bragging about how he got a coworker fired by planting fake emails. Sam didn't know who the guy was, but he said Ethan laughed about it like it was a joke. That was the moment I stopped being afraid. I knew then Ethan wasn't just a bad boss. He was dangerous. But that was okay, because I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was quietly building a case. And when the time came, I would burn his whole little empire to the ground. Ethan always knew how to play the game, dirty. After realizing I wouldn't break easily, he found new ways to mess with me. It wasn't just me anymore, though. He was stirring chaos across the whole team. He started cozying up to the VP's assistant, Tara. She was smart and careful, but Ethan had his way of pushing boundaries. He brought her coffee every morning, complimented her in meetings, and always found excuses to stop by her desk. People noticed. Some thought they were dating. I knew better. He wanted something from her. Soon, Ethan started dropping little hints about company changes, even before they were announced. Like when certain teams were being restructured or when someone was getting demoted. That kind of info didn't come from gossip. It came from someone close to the top. He used it like ammunition. If he knew you were on thin ice with management, he'd casually mention it during team meeting. If someone was insecure about their job, he played on that fear. He turned co-workers against each other without them even realizing it. People started whispering more. No one trusted anyone. Then came the special project. Ethan called me into his office on a Thursday afternoon and dropped a thick folder onto my desk. "You'll be presenting this to marketing heads Monday morning," he said, smiling like he just won a bet. "Make it perfect." I flipped through it. It was a full campaign strategy, something that would normally take a team a month. I asked, "Shouldn't this go to the full team?" "No," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I want to see what you can do. Or can't." He wanted me to fail. Publicly. So I didn't sleep that weekend. I worked through Friday night, barely ate Saturday, and by Sunday, I was running on caffeine and spite. I built the presentation from scratch, polished every slide, ran mock-ups, wrote copy, even included performance predictions. It was flawless. Monday morning, I walked into the meeting room early. I had everything ready. I handed Ethan a printed version as the execs filed in. He didn't even look at it. Halfway through the meeting, he tossed my folder aside and said, "We'll circle back to this one later. It's not really presentation ready." And then he moved on to the next speaker. My heart dropped. I sat there, holding in the scream building inside me. But I didn't say a word. I didn't know it then, but someone else was watching, closely. There was a new consultant, shadowing our department for the week. He introduced himself as Jay, said he was observing team dynamics ahead of the CEO transition. No one suspected anything. But Jay wasn't just a consultant. He was my brother. And he had just watched Ethan humiliate me for no reason. Ethan thought he was running the show. But the real power had just walked into the room. And he was taking notes. The office was buzzing. You could feel it in the air. Something big was coming. People whispered in corners, checking over their shoulders. The rumor was out. The current CEO was stepping down. And a new one had already been picked. No one knew who it was, not even the managers. That made everyone nervous. The company had always run like a private club, with the top players protecting their own. But now, everything was about to change. And Ethan knew it. He shifted overnight. The same man who barked orders and rolled his eyes at his team suddenly became Mr. Polite. He brought donuts to meetings, smiled at interns, and even asked people how their weekends went. It was fake. Everyone knew it. But no one said a thing. He was especially sweet to upper management. He started sending long, flattering emails to directors and scheduling one-on-one meetings with them. He even changed how he dressed, trading his usual polo shirts for button-ups and ties. He was trying to look like a leader, trying to prove he was ready for a higher role before the new CEO arrived. One night, I got a call from my brother. He couldn't say much, but he told me the transition was happening soon. "Just a little longer," he said. "He won't see it coming." I was tired. Ethan was still making my days hell. But I trusted my brother. I could wait. Besides, I was still collecting proof, one petty move at a time. Then, something happened I wasn't ready for. I stayed late to finish up a report. As I walked past the HR office, I heard voices inside. The door was cracked open just a little. I paused when I heard my name. "She's not a good fit," Ethan was saying. "No leadership potential. Not worth the resources. If we're cleaning house before the new CEO takes over, she should be on the list." I froze. The HR manager responded quietly, but I heard enough to know she didn't push back. Deadweight. That's what he called me. I pulled out my phone and hit record. He kept talking, listing off fake reasons why I should be let go, painting himself as a concerned team lead, just trying to improve efficiency. I stood there, barely breathing, heart pounding in my chest. After a few minutes, the conversation ended and the lights went off. I ducked around the corner until Ethan walked out. I played the audio back on the way home. It was crystal clear. That night, I added it to my growing folder. Emails, screenshots, videos, and now this recording. Ethan thought he was cleaning house. But soon, he'd find out the house didn't belong to him. It belonged to me and my family, and we were about to change the locks. The announcement came on a Monday morning. The new CEO had officially taken over. The company sent out a fancy email with a photo, a short bio, and a message about fresh leadership and exciting change. Ethan read it aloud in the break room like he was reading his own award. "This guy's a heavy hitter," he said, scrolling through the bio. "Big-name schools, major companies. Yeah, I could definitely work under someone like this." He smirked at me across the room. "Hope you're ready to step up, new girl. Big changes ahead." I just nodded and went back to my laptop. Inside, I was shaking with excitement. The photo in the email, the man Ethan thought he could impress, was my brother. His name was Daniel Harper, but here, everyone would call him Mr. Harper. Ethan had no clue. A few days later, the company threw a small welcome party in the main conference hall. Decorations, drinks, some light music. Nothing fancy, just a way to make the new CEO feel at home. Ethan dressed like he was going to a wedding. Clean shave, fresh haircut, expensive watch. He even practiced a little speech ahead of time. I know because I overheard him in the bathroom rehearsing it in the mirror. He walked into the party with his usual fake charm dialed all the way up. The moment my brother stepped through the door, Ethan was the first to greet him, shaking his hand like they were old friends. "I've heard great things about you," Ethan said, grinning. "We're lucky to have someone with your vision. I've been trying to push for innovation myself. Maybe we'll have a chance to sit down sometime." My brother was polite. "Calm. Cool. Let's see how your team performs first," he said simply. Ethan laughed awkwardly. Of course. No pressure." Later, during the speeches, someone handed Ethan the mic. I don't know if he asked for it or just grabbed it himself, but he stood in front of the whole room and delivered the most painful, awkward speech I've ever heard. He went on about team unity, leading by example, and how he was excited to collaborate with Mr. Harper. He tried to sound impressive, but it was clear he was just talking about himself. Then my brother stepped up to speak. He thanked everyone, talked about the company's future, and how he believed in integrity and accountability. Then he looked straight at me, smiled, and said, "And I'm especially proud to be here with someone I trust more than anyone else in this room, my sister." The silence that followed was beautiful. All eyes turned to me, then to Ethan. His face drained of color. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. I smiled, but we didn't fire him. Not yet. It was going to be more fun watching him sweat. After the welcome party, everything changed, but not for me. I kept doing my work like usual. I stayed quiet, stayed focused. But Ethan? He unraveled fast. The moment he realized who I really was, panic set in. At first, he avoided me completely. No eye contact, no sarcastic comments, nothing. He walked around me like I was made of glass. Then he tried something worse, being nice. "Hey," he said one morning, showing up by my desk with a coffee. "Thought you might like this. Just, no hard feelings." I looked at the cup, then at him. "No thanks," I said, and turned back to my screen. That was it. I didn't raise my voice, didn't get revenge. Why? Just cold, professional, and distant. That hit harder than yelling ever could. He was clearly uncomfortable with it. He kept trying to start small talk, compliment my work, even offer to help. I never gave him anything back. And now that my brother was CEO, I didn't have to hide anymore. I was given real projects, real responsibility. My ideas were taken seriously. People listened when I spoke in meetings, and Ethan had to sit there and watch it happen. He started to slip. His temper returned, but in smaller, more desperate ways. He'd slam drawers, mutter under his breath, blame others for his mistakes. But no one protected him now. People started talking behind his back. Some even came to me, quietly thanking me for surviving him. Then, just when I thought he'd finally back off, he tried one last trick. He sent me the wrong version of a client proposal, hoping I'd present it and look incompetent. He forgot to CC me on important emails. He told interns to deliver files late, so I'd miss deadline. But I was ready for him. I checked everything, backed up all my work, confirmed every meeting, every file. I caught every move he made before it landed. It drove him insane. One evening, I was packing up when Sam, the janitor, came to my desk. He looked around, lowered his voice, and said, "You'll want to see this." He handed me a small USB drive. "What is it?" I asked. "Security footage." "You didn't get it from me." I nodded, heart already racing. At home, I opened the files. It was clear video from one of the back storage rooms. The footage showed Ethan opening locked cabinets and sliding office electronics into his bag, twice on different nights. The timestamps were recent. He didn't know the cameras had been upgraded. He wasn't just a bully. He was a thief. And now I had proof. I added the footage to my file, the final nail in the coffin. Let him keep pretending. Let him think he still had control. Soon, he'd find out just how far he'd fallen. The meeting invite went out on a Friday afternoon. Subject line, mandatory department review, Monday 9 a.m. Everyone in our division was on the list. No details, no explanation, just one line, attendance required. By Monday morning, the whole office was buzzing. People showed up early, whispering in the hallway, wondering what was going on. Some guessed it was about budgets. Others thought someone was getting fired. No one knew the truth, except me. I sat near the front, quiet, my folder on my lap. Ethan walked in 10 minutes late, acting casual, but his forehead was shiny with sweat. He didn't smile at anyone, didn't speak, just sat down and stared at the floor. My brother entered the room a few minutes later, followed by the heads of HR, IT, and legal. That's when everyone knew this wasn't just another staff meeting. He stood at the front of the room, calm and collected. "Thank you for being here," he said. "As the new CEO, it's my responsibility to ensure that this company is built on trust, professionalism, and respect. Recently, some serious concerns have come to my attention." The room went still. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't get dramatic. He just spoke clearly and firmly. "Today, we're going to address those concerns head-on." He looked over at Ethan. "Ethan Caldwell," he said. "This involves you directly." Ethan shifted in his seat. I don't understand." My brother nodded to the HR rep, who handed out printed copies of documents to everyone in the room. The first page was an email, one Ethan had sent, mocking a coworker and blaming them for a mistake he made. The next was a transcript of a recorded conversation where he called me deadweight and asked HR to remove me. Then screenshots. Then more emails. My brother paused. "And there's one more piece of evidence." I stood up and walked to the front. I plugged the USB into the projector and hit play. The video showed Ethan in the storage room, stuffing monitors and a tablet into his bag. Not once, but twice. The date and time stamped in the corner. You could hear people gasp. Ethan stood up, red-faced. "That's not what it looks like. I was just moving equipment." My brother raised his hand. "There are inventory reports showing those items as missing, filed days after this footage was recorded. I didn't steal anything." Ethan shouted, his voice cracking. "This is all twisted." HR, legal, and IT were all silent. They didn't need to say anything. The evidence was there. Complete. Clean. Unshakable. My brother looked at him one last time. "You've spent months bullying, lying, and abusing your power. And now it's over." Security arrived moments later. Ethan didn't speak again. He just stood there, shaking, as they walked him out. I watched him leave with the same smile he once hated on my face. And this time, everyone saw it. Ethan didn't make a sound as security walked him out of the meeting room. He kept his eyes down, face red, jaw clenched tight. No more smirks. No fake charm. Just silence. The hallway outside was packed. People had been peeking in once the news started to spread. Word traveled fast. Most of the office didn't even know what was happening until they saw him being escorted, hands stiff at his sides like he didn't know what to do with them. And they watched. The same people he had humiliated, ignored, talked over, and blamed for his own mistakes. They stood and watched as he passed by, eyes wide, mouths half open. He walked past the intern he once made cry for missing a comma. Past the tech guy he yelled at for a printer error. Past the woman from accounting he told to smile more. No one said a word to him, not even goodbye. He turned the corner and disappeared. I stepped out of the room a minute later, my folder still in hand. Some people clapped softly. Others nodded at me. One coworker mouthed, "Thank you." Another said out loud, "It's about time." I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my arms or shout or laugh. I just stood tall and took a breath that felt like it had been stuck in my chest for months. Then, like fate had timed it perfectly, Ethan's voice echoed down the hall from the elevator bay, angry, cracked. "You think you're better than me? You only made it here because of your brother." I walked over, just far enough so he could see me before the elevator doors closed. I looked him dead in the eye and said, calm and clear, "I told you I'd make it here." He didn't reply. The doors shut in front of his face. Back inside, people gathered around. Some apologized. A few said they wished they'd spoken up sooner. Others looked relieved, like a weight had been lifted off the whole floor. One of my coworkers smiled at me and asked, "So, are you staying?" Before I could answer, my brother walked over. "Actually," he said, looking at me with that big brother grin, "I was hoping to bring her on full-time, as my advisor for company culture and ethics." Everyone turned to me. I looked around the office. It felt different already, lighter, quieter, like the air was finally clean. I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "I think I'll stay." It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about rebuilding, fixing what had been broken for so long, making sure no one else had to go through what I did. Ethan had fallen hard, and I was just getting started. It didn't take long for Ethan to try and fight back. A week after he was fired, he posted a long rant on LinkedIn. It was dramatic, full of vague language, and clearly aimed at the company, and at me. He talked about being pushed out unfairly by people with personal connections, and claimed it was all part of some internal power play. He hinted at favoritism and false accusations, hoping to get sympathy. A few of his old buddies liked the post, but most people saw right through it. He didn't mention the stolen equipment, or the abusive emails, or the footage. The company didn't name him directly, but they released a calm, professional statement later that day. It spoke about leadership changes, a commitment to transparency, and their ongoing effort to build a healthier, more respectful workplace. Buried in the middle was one sharp sentence. "We take misconduct seriously, especially when it involves the misuse of power or company resources." People connected the dots. And just like that, Ethan's little public tantrum lost steam. While he was busy trying to rewrite the past, I was moving forward fast. My brother didn't waste time. A few days after Ethan was gone, I was officially promoted to a strategic operations role, with a focus on ethics and workplace culture. My new title meant I'd be working across departments, reviewing team practices, improving training, and helping rebuild trust from the inside out. I had my own office, a team of 3, real responsibility, and real respect. The change wasn't just internal, either. Word got out, quietly at first, but it spread. A few people in the industry reached out on LinkedIn, congratulating me, asking for coffee chats, saying things like, "We heard what happened. You handled it well." One startup founder messaged, "If you ever want to build something from scratch, give me a call." Another said, "We need more women like you in leadership." I wasn't used to that kind of praise, but it felt good because I knew I earned it. There were moments where I still thought about those first awful weeks. The embarrassment, the helplessness, the way Ethan made me feel so small. But those memories didn't sting the same anymore. Now they felt like proof of how far I'd come. I didn't just survive the storm. I became the storm. And the next time someone like Ethan tried to abuse their power, I'd be the one standing in their way. It had been 6 months since Ethan was fired. The company had changed a lot in that time. The mood in the office was lighter, the meetings more respectful, and people actually looked forward to coming in. My role as Chief Culture Officer had become more than just a title. It was a mission, and I loved it. One Thursday evening, I was invited to a networking event for tech leaders and professionals in the area. It was being held at a fancy downtown hotel. I didn't really feel like going, but my brother encouraged me. "Go," he said. "You never know who you'll run into." He wasn't wrong. I had just finished grabbing a drink from the bar when I spotted him across the room. Ethan. He looked different, thinner, more tired. His suit was wrinkled, and his hair wasn't styled the way it used to be. He was standing near a small booth with a few flyers laid out on a table. A startup nobody had heard of. A role that clearly didn't carry any power. He saw me. Of course he did. And he walked over. "Well, if it isn't the CEO's little sister," he said, forcing a smile. "Still hiding behind family connections?" I smiled back, calm and unfazed. "Still pretending you had nothing to do with your own downfall?" His face twitched. That whole thing was blown out of proportion. "Everyone makes mistakes." "Sure," I said. "But not everyone gets caught on camera making them." He shifted, clearly annoyed, but trying to hide it. "Whatever. I'm better off anyway. That company was toxic." "Not anymore," I replied. "We cleaned it out." He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but no words came. I gave him one last look, then turned and walked away. I didn't need to win that conversation. I already had. Back at the office the next morning, I sat down at my desk, in a corner office with a full view of the city. Sunlight poured in through the glass. On my door, my nameplate gleamed. Harper Jameson, Chief Culture Officer. I took a breath and looked around at the space I had built. Not just the office, but the environment. Safe, fair, strong, funny. The man who once called me useless. The man who said I'd never make it. He had no idea he was the reason I rose, and he'd never be able to stop me again.
Hi besties, thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe.